Chapter 1. The quiet before. Randy Olsen had never been the kind of man who confused noise for meaning. That, he liked to think, was why his relationship with Kelly Miles had worked when so many before it hadn't. They didn't rush. They didn't dramatize. They talked things through, agreed on what mattered, and made room for each other's lives instead of trying to swallow them whole. 3 years together, and it still felt intentional. At least, it had. Randy sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, his laptop closed, his dinner cooling untouched. Outside, the late evening traffic murmured like a distant tide. He checked the calendar on his phone again. Not because he needed to, but because denial sometimes masqueraded as hope. Their anniversary had been 5 days ago. Kelly had always been the one who remembered, the one who planned, the one who made reservations weeks in advance and insisted anniversaries weren't just dates, they were punctuation marks. "If you don't stop and look," she'd said once, grinning over a candlelit table, "you forget what the sentence is about." That was why Randy hadn't reminded her. His grandfather's voice surfaced uninvited, steady and infuriatingly calm. "Pay attention to the little things. That's where the big things are born." 3 months earlier, Randy had stood at a jewelry counter under fluorescent lights, palms sweating, heart steady. The ring wasn't extravagant. Kelly wouldn't have liked that, but it was thoughtful. Clean lines, a small diamond that caught the light without demanding it. He'd been certain. Now the ring sat in a lockbox at his bank, tucked away like a sentence he wasn't sure he still meant to say. The shift hadn't been sudden. That was the problem. It had crept in politely, like a guest who stayed a little too long. Kelly's college friend, Maya, had moved back to town earlier in the year. New job at Kelly's company. New energy. New lunches that ran long. New after-work drinks that turned into entire evenings. At first, Randy had been glad Kelly had someone familiar again. "You should meet her," Kelly had said one night, shrugging off her coat. "You'd like her. Anyone who survived dorm life with you deserves a medal," Randy had replied, earning a laugh and a kiss. But weeks passed, and dinners together became rescheduled. Calls were shorter. Texts were answered, but without the texture they used to have. Randy told himself this was normal. People got busy. Life expanded and contracted. Still, when their anniversary arrived and went unmarked, something inside him went very still. He didn't bring it up, not because he didn't care, but because he cared enough to listen. Then came his birthday. Randy wasn't big on birthdays. Kelly was. She made cakes from scratch. She insisted on candles even when he joked about fire hazards. She always woke him up with a kiss and a smile and some variation of, "I'm so glad you were born." This year, his phone stayed silent. By evening, he stopped checking it. He spent his birthday night eating takeout noodles alone on his couch, the TV murmuring something he wasn't watching. He wasn't angry, not yet. Anger would have been easier. What he felt instead was a careful, aching clarity. 3 days later, Kelly came over for dinner. She looked the same. That was the strange part. Same dark hair pulled back loosely, same soft sweater she liked to steal from his place. Same easy smile as she stepped inside. "Hey," she said, leaning in to kiss him. "Something smells good." "Hey," Randy replied. They cooked together, moving around each other with practiced ease. Pasta boiled. Wine was poured. They talked about work, about a coworker of hers who'd botched a presentation, about a new cafe opening down the street. Kelly laughed, bright and familiar, and for a moment Randy wondered if he'd imagined everything. They sat down to eat. Halfway through the meal, Randy set his fork down. "Do you still want a life with me?" The question landed between them with a soft, devastating finality. Kelly blinked. "What? I'm not asking to fight," he said calmly. "I just need to know." "Of course I do," she said immediately, reflexively. "Why would you even ask that?" Randy met her eyes. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. "I don't know what's going on," he said. "But you forgot our anniversary. And my birthday. Whatever your attention is on, it isn't me." The color drained from her face. "Oh my God," Kelly whispered. "Randy, She stopped, pressing her hand to her mouth. "I forgot," she said, horror dawning. "I actually forgot." Randy nodded once. "That's what I needed to understand." "I didn't mean," she laughed weakly, then shook her head. "That sounds awful. I didn't mean to forget. Things have just been busy." "Busy isn't the problem," Randy said gently. "Disconnected is." Kelly pushed her chair back and stood, pacing once before stopping. Her voice trembled now. "I set those expectations. I know I did. And I don't know how I let this happen." Randy watched her, feeling the familiar ache of loving someone who was suddenly unsure of their footing. "I love you," she said, eyes shining. "I've just been careless. And I don't know how to fix that." He didn't answer right away. Outside, a car horn blared, distant and impatient. "I don't need perfection," Randy said finally. "I need presence." Kelly nodded, tears slipping free. "I'm so scared I broke something I can't fix." Randy stood, crossing the space between them. He didn't touch her, not yet. "Then we figure out whether it's broken," he said. "Or just neglected." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was waiting. Chapter 2. The question at the table. Kelly didn't sleep that night. She lay on her back in her apartment, staring at the ceiling fan as it cut slow, uneven circles through the dark. Every few minutes she replayed the look on Randy's face. Not angry, not accusing, just steady and tired in a way that scared her more than shouting ever could. You forgot our anniversary. And my birthday. The words felt unreal. Not because they weren't true, but because they didn't fit with the version of herself she carried around so confidently. Kelly Miles was the woman who remembered things. She was the planner, the calendar color-coder, the person who insisted on showing up fully because she dated men who hadn't. And now she was the one who hadn't. The morning after dinner, she stood under the shower longer than usual, letting the water run hot until her skin flushed pink. Her phone sat on the counter, screen dark. Randy hadn't texted. She hadn't expected him to. At work, she was useless. Maya noticed first. "You're doing that thing," Maya said from the neighboring desk, wheeling her chair closer. "The staring through the monitor thing." Kelly blinked. "Am I?" "Yeah. It's either existential dread or a really bad date." Kelly let out a humorless laugh. "Try possibly imploded my long-term relationship by being an idiot." Maya winced. "That bad?" "I forgot our anniversary," Kelly said. "And his birthday." "Oh," Maya said softly. "Oh no." Kelly dropped her face into her hands. "I didn't forget on purpose. Everything blurred together. Work, projects, you moving here, late nights. I thought I was managing it all." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Did he tell you how it made him feel?" "Yes," Kelly said, calmly, which somehow made it worse. That afternoon crawled by. Kelly drafted 3 different texts to Randy and deleted all of them. "I'm sorry" felt too small. "Can we talk?" felt selfish. By evening, she knew avoiding him would only make things worse. She showed up at Randy's apartment with a bottle of wine and no plan. He opened the door and stepped back to let her in. He looked composed. That unsettled her. She'd expected distance or tension. Instead, there was just a careful neutrality that felt like standing on ice she wasn't sure would hold. "I didn't know if you wanted company," Kelly said. "I wasn't sure either," Randy replied. "But you're here now." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them heavier than any argument. "I've been thinking," Kelly said, twisting the wine bottle in her hands, "about how this happened. And I think I got complacent." Randy nodded slightly. "That happens." "No," she said quickly. "I mean, I assumed solid meant automatic, that we didn't have to check in the same way anymore." He considered that. "Did you stop wanting to?" "No," Kelly said immediately. "God, no. I just stopped noticing when I wasn't." She looked at him then, really looked, the faint line between his brows, the way his shoulders held tension even at rest. "You didn't remind me," she said softly. "I know," Randy replied. "I wanted to see if you remembered without prompting." Kelly swallowed. "And when I didn't? I had my answer," he said. "At least about where your attention was." She nodded, tears pricking. "I never stopped loving you. I didn't say you did. But you wondered if I stopped choosing you," she said. Randy didn't deny it. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of things unsaid, waiting to be handled carefully. "I don't want to lose you," Kelly said finally. "But I'm terrified that wanting something different, or being distracted, means I already have." Randy leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Wanting different things isn't the same as neglecting the thing you already have." She laughed weakly. "You always do that. Say the thing that makes it sound simple." "It isn't simple," he said. "But it is honest." Kelly shifted closer. Not touching, but no longer retreating. "Are you still thinking about the future we talked about? Marriage? Kids? All of it?" "Yes," Randy said without hesitation. "But only if it's intentional. I don't want to be the background noise of someone's life." The words landed hard because they were fair. "I don't want that either," Kelly said. "I just forgot that intention doesn't maintain itself." Randy studied her. "So what do you want to do now?" She hesitated. This was the moment where grand gestures tempted her. Promises. Overcorrections. She forced herself to stay grounded. "I want to earn back your trust," she said. "Not with speeches, but with attention. And if you need space to decide whether that's enough, I'll respect that." Randy was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "I don't want to punish you. I want to understand whether we can be present again." Kelly nodded. "Then let me show you." He stood, offering a hand. Not to pull her close, but to help her up. "We don't fix this tonight," he said. "But we don't ignore it either." Kelly took his hand. Felt familiar. Not safe yet, but real. "Thank you for asking the question," she said, even though it hurt. Randy met her eyes. "Thank you for not dismissing it." They stood there, hands still linked, suspended between what had been lost and what might still be rebuilt. Outside, the city hummed on, indifferent but constant. Inside, something fragile remained, and for the first time since the dates slipped by unnoticed, Kelly understood just how carefully it would need to be held. Chapter 3. The space after Randy discovered that silence came in layers. There was the immediate quiet after Kelly left that night, the physical absence, the faint scent of her shampoo still clinging to the couch cushion. Then there was the deeper quiet that followed him through the next few days, settling into his routines like an uninvited but patient guest. He went to work. He answered emails. He nodded in meetings and ate lunch at his desk. What he didn't do was text her. That wasn't punishment. It was self-preservation. On Wednesday evening, Randy drove out to his grandfather's place, a modest house on the edge of town with a yard that had once been meticulously kept and was now cheerfully overgrown. His grandfather, Harold, answered the door in socks and a cardigan, peering at Randy over reading glasses. "Well, I'll be damned," Harold said. "You look like a man who's thinking too much." "Good to see you too," Randy replied, stepping inside. They sat at the kitchen table with mugs of coffee that were too strong and a plate of store-bought cookies Harold pretended not to like. "So," Harold said after a moment, "what did the little things turn into?" Randy exhaled. "She forgot our anniversary. And my birthday." Harold winced. "That's not little." "No," Randy agreed. "But it started that way." He told him everything about Maya, about the slow drift, about the question at the dinner table. Harold listened without interrupting, his hands folded, eyes sharp. When Randy finished, Harold nodded once. "You did the right thing by asking." "I don't feel like it," Randy said. "Doing the right thing rarely feels good in the moment," Harold said. "You're not wrong to expect to be seen. But don't confuse distraction with disregard too quickly." Randy frowned. "What's the difference?" "Disregard is a choice," Harold said. "Distraction is a failure. One can be repaired. The other usually can't." That sat with Randy the whole drive home. Kelly, meanwhile, was making a mess of repair attempts. She tried to throw herself into work, but guilt followed her into every meeting room. She caught herself opening her calendar compulsively, triple-checking dates as if vigilance could undo what had already happened. On Thursday, she told her sister. "You forgot his birthday?" Her sister asked over the phone, horrified. "Kelly, you once planned a weekend trip because his birthday fell on a Tuesday." "I know," Kelly groaned. "Please stop reminding me. My shame already has a voice." Her sister softened. "Okay, do you want advice or sympathy?" "Advice," Kelly said. "But gentle advice." "Then stop trying to fix this fast," her sister said. "He's hurt, not broken. Give him room to decide whether he can trust you again." Kelly hung up and immediately opened her messages to Randy. She typed, "I'm thinking about you." Deleted it. "I miss you." Deleted it. Finally, she put her phone down and sat on her bed, hands clenched in her lap. Space, she realized, was not passive. It required discipline. By Saturday, Randy's friends noticed something was off. "You're quieter," said Mark, leaning back in his chair at the bar. "That's never good." "I'm fine," Randy said. "That's never true," Mark replied. Randy sighed. "Kelly and I are reassessing." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Reassessing like taking a beat? Or reassessing like burning sage and Googling apartments?" "Somewhere in between," Randy said. Mark nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, well, my advice is terrible, so feel free to ignore it." "I always do." "If she didn't cheat," Mark said, "and she owned her mistake, then the question isn't whether she screwed up. It's whether she's willing to change the behavior." Randy took a sip of his beer. "That's the question." Across town, Kelly ran into Randy by accident at the grocery store. They reached for the same carton of eggs. "Oh," Kelly said, pulling her hand back too quickly. "Sorry." "It's okay," Randy said, stepping aside. "You go ahead." They stood there awkwardly for a second, surrounded by fluorescent lights and an elderly couple debating yogurt flavors. "How are you?" Kelly asked. "Okay," Randy said. "You?" "Trying not to emotionally spiral in public places," she said, managing a small smile. He smiled back before he could stop himself. "I've been giving you space," she said. "But I wanted you to know. I'm not disappearing." "I know," Randy replied. "And I appreciate that." They lingered another moment, neither quite ready to walk away. "I'll see you," Kelly said eventually. "Yeah," Randy said. "You will." That night, Randy went to the bank. The teller recognized him and slid the lockbox across the counter without comment. His hands were steady as he opened it, the ring catching the light just as it had 3 months earlier. He didn't take it out. He closed the box and slid it back. Not yet. Kelly spent Sunday morning alone at a cafe, notebook open, pen idle. She wrote one sentence at the top of the page and stared at it for a long time. Tension is a choice. She thought about all the times she'd assumed stability meant safety, about how easy it had been to let momentum replace intention, about how Randy hadn't raised his voice or accused her. He just asked a question she should have been answering all along. She paid for her coffee and walked home, resolved but unsure. That evening, Randy received a single text. "I don't need an answer right now. I just want you to know I'm here when you're ready to talk again." He stared at it for a long moment. Then he typed back, "Thank you. I'm not shutting the door. I just need to make sure I'm not stepping through it alone." Kelly read the message twice, then set her phone down and let herself cry. Relief and regret tangled together. Neither of them knew what the next step would be. But for the first time since the dates slipped by unnoticed, they were both paying attention to the space between things. And that, quietly, felt like a beginning. Chapter 4. The other page. Kelly Miles had always believed that if something wasn't broken, you didn't need to take it apart to examine it. That belief, she was beginning to understand, was how things broke quietly. Sunday night bled into Monday morning with the kind of exhaustion that sleep didn't touch. Kelly sat at her kitchen counter with her laptop open and her coffee untouched, scrolling through old photos she hadn't looked at in months. Not because she missed them, she'd never stopped loving Randy, but because she was trying to pinpoint when certainty had turned into assumption. There they were at year 1, grinning and sunburned at the beach. Year 2, bundled together at a winter market, his arms snug around her shoulders. The third year started strong. Hikes, dinners, routines that felt earned. And then, fewer pictures. Not because they weren't together, but because she'd stopped marking the moments. At work, Kelly had always been ambitious. She liked momentum. She liked feeling capable and useful and trusted. When Maya joined the company, it reignited a part of her that had been dormant. Competition, excitement, the reminder that she was still climbing. Lunches turned into brainstorming sessions. Brainstorming turned into late nights. Late nights turned into a rhythm that didn't include pausing to check who she was leaving waiting. Kelly leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. Distraction is a failure, Randy's grandfather's words echoed, though she'd never heard them directly. She felt them anyway. It wasn't that she wanted a different life than the one she and Randy had planned. She wanted more of it, and instead of expanding outward together, she'd expanded sideways alone. That afternoon, she met her friend Jess for coffee. "You look like someone who's realized something unfortunate about herself," Jess said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I am," Kelly replied. "Apparently, I'm capable of being the emotionally absent one." Jess raised an eyebrow. "That's new." "I know. I hate it." Kelly told her everything, carefully, honestly, without casting herself as the victim. Jess listened, stirring her latte long after it needed it. "Do you still want the same future?" Jess asked when Kelly finished. "Yes," Kelly said immediately. "With him." "Then here's the thing," Jess said. "You didn't cheat. You didn't lie. You didn't stop loving him. But you did stop choosing him out loud." Kelly swallowed. "How do I fix that without turning it into a performance?" Jess smiled gently. "You don't fix it. You change the behavior and let him decide whether he believes you." That night, Kelly went home and did something she hadn't done in a long time. She planned nothing. No texts, no gestures, no speeches rehearsed in her head. She cooked herself a simple dinner, cleaned up, and sat on her couch with the quiet. It was uncomfortable. She noticed how often she reached for her phone, how reflexively she checked the time, how her mind kept trying to do something instead of be somewhere. She realized then how much of her presence with Randy had become passive, assumed rather than chosen. On Tuesday evening, she ran into Randy again. This time, it was at the small park between their apartments, the one with uneven benches and a path that looped just long enough to feel intentional. She almost turned around when she saw him, instinct telling her not to intrude. But he saw her too. "Hey," he said, slowing his pace. "Hey," she replied. They fell into step beside each other without discussion, walking the path once in silence. "I've been thinking," Kelly said finally, "about what you said. About presence." Randy nodded. "Me too. I don't want you to think I was bored with us," she said, "or taking you for granted because I thought you'd always be there." "I didn't think you were bored," he said. "I thought you were elsewhere." She winced. "That's fair." They reached the end of the path and stopped. "I realized something," Kelly continued. "I treated stability like it meant I didn't have to show up the same way anymore. And that's not what stability is. It's just a different kind of effort." Randy studied her, not guarded, but careful. "And what does that effort look like to you?" She considered. "Attention without waiting to be reminded. Making room instead of assuming space will always exist." He nodded slowly. "That sounds right." Kelly took a breath. "I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. I just want you to know I'm not trying to rush past this." "I know," Randy said. "And that matters." They stood there for a moment, the air cool, the city dimming around them. "I should go," Kelly said. "Okay," Randy replied. She hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, I'm grateful you asked the question instead of pulling away quietly." He gave a small smile. "I'm trying to do better at that." Kelly walked home feeling lighter and heavier all at once. Across town, Randy sat on his couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. He thought about the ring in the lockbox, not as a symbol of what he was waiting for, but of what he refused to rush. He didn't want certainty without intention. Kelly, meanwhile, opened her calendar and added a recurring reminder. Not for dates or events, but a simple note every Sunday evening. Who am I choosing this week? She didn't know yet whether Randy would choose her again. But for the first time, she was fully aware of the page she was on, and the cost of not turning it deliberately. Chapter 5. Accidental almosts. The city had a way of forcing proximity on people who were trying very hard to be careful. Randy noticed it first on Wednesday morning, standing in line at the coffee shop near his office. He was half awake, mentally rehearsing a meeting, when the person in front of him turned slightly and said, "I still think oat milk is lying to us." He looked up. Kelly froze mid-sentence, her eyes widening. "Oh, oh," Randy echoed. They stood there, trapped by caffeine dependency and social politeness. The barista looked between them expectantly. "You go ahead," Randy said automatically. "No, you were first," Kelly replied at the same time. They both paused, then laughed, quietly, reflexively. The sound startled them both. Randy ordered. Kelly ordered. They stepped aside, not quite sure where to stand. "So," Kelly said, gesturing vaguely, "you work around here?" "Occasionally," Randy replied dryly. She smiled, then sobered. "How are you?" "Still thinking," he said, "but less spiraling." She nodded. "Same." Their drinks were called. They exchanged an awkward half-wave and went separate directions, both walking away a little faster than necessary. Randy spent the rest of the morning distracted, not in the heavy, weighted way from before, but with something closer to nervous energy. He replayed the exchange, cataloging what it hadn't been. It hadn't been tense. It hadn't been cold. It hadn't been resolved. That afternoon, Mark cornered him near the copy machine. "You smiling at Toner now?" Mark asked. "Because that's concerning." Randy shook his head. Ran into Kelly. And it was fine. Mark squinted. Fine like fine, or fine like emotionally treacherous neutral ground. "The second one," Randy admitted. Mark nodded sagely. "Ah, the worst one." Across town, Kelly was having her own version of the same problem. She ran into Randy again on Friday evening at the gym. They both pretended they didn't share anymore. She debated turning around when she saw his car in the lot, then decided she refused to let avoidance dictate her routines. They ended up on adjacent treadmills. "Of course," Kelly muttered. Randy glanced over, amused despite himself. "We should stop meeting like this, or start coordinating," she said. "Take the mystery out of it." They ran in silence for a few minutes, the rhythmic thud of their footsteps oddly grounding. "You're still running at the same pace," Kelly said, slightly breathless. "I always hated that." "You always complained," Randy replied. "Never stopped trying to beat me." She smirked. "I like a challenge." Something unspoken flickered between them. Not flirtation exactly, but familiarity brushing up against restraint. Afterward, they stood by the lockers, both pretending to stretch. "I've been trying to do this differently," Kelly said. "Not rushing. Not over-explaining." Randy nodded. "I can tell." She hesitated. "I miss you." He met her eyes. "I know." That night, Randy dreamed of the proposal he hadn't given. In the dream, Kelly was laughing, radiant, the ring sliding onto her finger easily. Then the scene shifted. The ring fell, clattering across the floor, rolling just out of reach. He woke with his heart racing, staring into the dark. Saturday brought a mutual friend's birthday party, one they'd both RSVP'd to months earlier. Randy considered backing out. Kelly did too. Neither did. They arrived separately, both bracing themselves. The party was loud and crowded and deeply inconvenient. There was nowhere to hide, no polite excuse to avoid eye contact. Their friends noticed immediately. "You two okay?" someone asked Kelly. "We're figuring it out," she replied honestly. Randy found himself talking to her without planning to. Small conversations, jokes exchanged across the room, the kind of easy banter that reminded him why this had worked in the first place. At one point, they ended up on the balcony together, city lights stretching out before them. "This feels like a bad idea," Kelly said quietly. "Being here?" Randy asked. "Pretending this is casual," she replied. He leaned against the railing. "We're not pretending. We're just not resolving it tonight." She smiled faintly. "You always were good at patience." "I learned it the hard way," he said. They stood shoulder to shoulder, close enough to feel the warmth, far enough not to touch. "I want to earn my way back," Kelly said. "Not just to you, but to the version of myself I like better." Randy considered that. That matters. When the party wound down, they left separately again. But this time, the distance didn't feel like retreat. Sunday afternoon, Randy finally opened the lockbox again. He took the ring out, held it. He didn't imagine proposing. He imagined waiting, not out of fear, but out of respect for the space they were navigating. He put the ring back, not with resignation, but with intention. Kelly, meanwhile, spent Sunday evening cooking for one, something she rarely did anymore. She ate at her table instead of the couch. She turned off her phone. She thought about how easy it would be to slide back into old patterns without examining them. How tempting it was to let affection replace accountability. She didn't want easy. By the end of the week, the tension between them had changed shape. It wasn't absence anymore. It was awareness, charged, careful, and unresolved. Neither of them knew where it would lead. But both of them knew this much. Whatever came next would not be accidental. Chapter 6. The honest fight, the fight happened on a Tuesday, which felt appropriate in a way neither of them could later explain. Not dramatic, not symbolic, just inconvenient enough to make it impossible to pretend it hadn't been necessary. Randy hadn't planned it. Kelly hadn't either. It started the way most honest confrontations do, not with raised voices but with a sentence that landed slightly wrong. They were sitting at Randy's kitchen table, coffee between them, the late afternoon sun cutting pale lines across the floor. Kelly had asked if she could come over. Randy had said yes without hesitation, which surprised them both. "I've been trying to show up better," Kelly said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "Not just with you, but with myself." Randy nodded. "I see that." She smiled, relieved. "Good, because I don't want you thinking this is temporary effort. I'm not trying to win you back like a prize." Something tightened in his chest. "I don't want to be won back," Randy said carefully. "I want to be chosen, consistently." Kelly's smile faltered. "That's what I mean." "I know," he said, "but there's a difference between effort motivated by fear and effort rooted in habit." Her shoulders stiffened. "So now I'm acting out of fear?" "I didn't say that," Randy replied. "I said I'm trying to understand what changes when things feel safe again." Silence stretched. Kelly set her mug down a little too hard. "You think I'll slip back?" "I think people do when they don't examine why they slipped in the first place," Randy said. Her voice sharpened. "I am examining it." "I know," he said, "but we haven't talked about the part where you stopped checking in with me emotionally." "That did it." Kelly leaned back, crossing her arms. "You mean when I stopped asking if you were okay every 5 minutes?" "No," Randy said. "I mean when you stopped noticing when I wasn't." Her eyes flashed. "You didn't tell me. I shouldn't have to announce neglect for it to count," he said, his tone still even but firmer now. Kelly stood, pacing once. "So what? You wanted me to read your mind?" "I wanted you to look at me," Randy said. "The way you used to." She stopped short. "That's not fair." "Neither is forgetting the 2 dates that mattered most to me," he said quietly. They stared at each other. The air thick now. No humor left to soften it. "I was scared," Kelly admitted suddenly. "Not of you, of stagnation. Of waking up one day and realizing I hadn't grown anymore." Randy blinked. "So you pulled away?" "I leaned elsewhere," she said. "Into work, into momentum, because growth felt safer than stillness." He absorbed that. "And where did I fit into that?" Kelly's voice dropped. "I assumed you were stable, that you didn't need checking in the same way." Randy laughed once, sharp and humorless. That assumption hurt more than the forgetting. Kelly's eyes filled. "I didn't mean to make you feel invisible." "I know," he said, "but intent doesn't erase impact." She nodded, tears slipping free now. "I hate that you're right." Randy stood, running a hand through his hair. "I don't want to be the safe thing you stop paying attention to. I want to be the thing you grow with." Kelly wiped her cheeks, steadying herself. "Then say that. Don't wait until you're already hurting." "I did," he said softly. "In small ways. I just didn't realize how quietly I was being missed." That landed harder than anything else. Kelly took a shaky breath. "I need you to know something." He waited. "I wasn't pulling away because I didn't want the future we planned," she said. "I was pulling away because I was afraid I'd disappear inside it." Randy considered her carefully. "Did you think I wanted you smaller?" "No," she whispered. "But I forgot to ask how we could expand together." They stood there, both exhausted now, not angry, but raw. "I don't want to start over," Kelly said. "But I don't want to go back to who we were either. Not if that version of us stopped paying attention." Randy nodded slowly. "Neither do I." They sat back down, the fight spent, the honesty still vibrating between them. "So where does that leave us?" Kelly asked. Randy exhaled. "Learning how to check in before something hurts. Saying the uncomfortable thing sooner. And not confusing peace with autopilot." She gave a small, watery laugh. "That sounds like work." "It is," he said. "But it's the kind I want if you do." Kelly reached across the table, resting her hand near his. Not touching, but close enough to matter. "I do." Randy didn't pull away. Outside, the sun dipped lower, the room dimming gently, as if the day itself understood that something important had just been dismantled. Not to destroy it, but to rebuild it properly. For the first time since the missed dates, neither of them felt like they were guessing. They were finally saying the things they'd been avoiding. And somehow, despite the fight, that felt like progress. Chapter 7. Relearning each other. They didn't call it getting back together. That distinction mattered more than either of them admitted out loud. Instead, they called it checking in, which sounded clinical and harmless, like something you could put on a calendar without tempting fate. In practice, it meant deliberately choosing moments that used to happen automatically, and discovering how different they felt when handled with care. The first one was coffee. Not an accidental run-in. Not a "since we're both here." Kelly texted Randy on Thursday afternoon. "Coffee Saturday morning? No pressure. Just time." Randy stared at the message longer than necessary. Then he typed back. 10 a.m. The place on Linden. When Kelly arrived, she was early. That was new. Or maybe it was old. Something she'd let slip when she assumed presence would always be mutual. Randy noticed immediately. "You beat me," he said, setting his coat down. "I'm trying a radical new approach," Kelly replied. "Being intentional." He smiled. "How's it going so far?" "Terrifying," she said honestly. "But promising." They ordered, sat by the window, and resisted the urge to fill every silence. They talked about small things at first, work updates, a movie they'd both seen separately and liked for different reasons. Then Kelly paused, fingers wrapped around her mug. "Can I ask something?" she said. "Please. When did you start feeling like you were fading into the background?" Randy didn't deflect. He appreciated that she'd asked directly. "Right after the holidays," he said. "You were excited about the new project at work. I was excited for you. But somewhere in there, our conversations stopped being about us." Kelly nodded slowly. "I remember that. I thought we were just stable." "I did too," Randy said, "until I realized stability had turned into silence." She winced. "I hate that." "I don't want you to hate it," he said. "I want us to learn from it." That became the pattern. They talked. They paused. They listened. No promises. No declarations. Just clarity. The next week, Randy suggested a walk after dinner. Not at the park where they'd run into each other before, but along the river path they used to frequent early in their relationship. "You sure you want to risk nostalgia?" Kelly asked lightly. "I want to see what it feels like now," he said. Felt different. Not worse. Just conscious. They didn't fall into step immediately. They adjusted. Slowed. Matched pace. "At first," Kelly said as they walked, "I was scared this would feel like starting over." "And now?" Randy asked. "Now it feels like starting with intention," she replied. "Which is harder, but better." Randy nodded. "I realized something too." "What?" "I didn't say anything sooner because I thought asking for attention meant being needy." Kelly stopped walking. "That's not needy," she said firmly. "That's honest." "I know that now," he said. "But I had to unlearn some things." They resumed walking, shoulders brushing briefly. An accidental touch that sent a quiet jolt through both of them. Neither commented on it. On Sunday evening, Kelly invited Randy over to her apartment for dinner. She cooked. Actually cooked. Not an impressive spread. Just roasted vegetables, chicken, and a salad she'd overthought and then simplified. "I'm trying to make this a habit," she said, setting plates down. "Creating space instead of filling it with convenience." Randy glanced around her apartment. Felt the same and not. Tidier. Intentional. "You've been doing work," he said. "I needed to," she replied. "I don't want to be the version of myself that coasts on good intentions." After dinner, they sat on the couch, a careful distance between them. "Can I ask another thing?" Kelly said. "Yeah. If we do this, really do this, what do you need from me that you didn't ask for before?" Randy considered. This question mattered. "I need you to check in when things feel fine," he said. "That's when I'm most likely to disappear quietly." Kelly nodded. "I can do that. And I need to know that if you start feeling restless again," he continued, "you'll talk to me. Not just redirect your energy elsewhere." She met his eyes. "I will. And I need you to tell me when you feel overlooked instead of waiting for proof." "That's fair," he said. They sat with that, letting the agreement settle without ceremony. Over the next few weeks, they created small rituals. A Sunday evening call, no distractions, just reflection. A midweek check-in text that wasn't logistical. A shared note on their phones titled things worth paying attention to. Sometimes the entries were serious. "When work gets busy, we still eat together." Sometimes they were absurd. "Randy hates oat milk. Stop pretending otherwise." Laughter returned gradually, not as relief but as recognition. One evening, after a particularly good dinner and an even better conversation, Kelly leaned back and said, "This feels steady again." Randy didn't flinch, but he didn't let the word pass unexamined either. "It does," he agreed. "And I think we know now what that actually requires." She smiled. "Attention. Every day," he said. There was still something unspoken between them. Not tension exactly, more like anticipation held carefully in both hands. Randy hadn't mentioned the ring. Kelly hadn't asked. But both of them were aware of time, not as pressure but as possibility. On a quiet Tuesday night, as they stood at Kelly's door saying goodbye, Kelly hesitated. "Can I do something?" she asked. Randy raised an eyebrow. "That depends entirely on what it is." She laughed, then stepped closer and kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was intentional in a way that made Randy's chest ache. When they pulled back, Kelly searched his face. "I didn't forget what this means." He rested his forehead against hers. "Neither did I." They didn't spend the night together. Not because they couldn't, but because they wanted each step to be chosen, not assumed. As Randy walked home, he realized something had shifted again. This time, it wasn't distance. It was alignment. Kelly closed her door and leaned against it, exhaling. For the first time in weeks, she felt grounded. Not because everything was resolved, but because nothing was being ignored. They weren't rushing toward a milestone. They were building a rhythm. And somewhere, quietly waiting in a lockbox, was a ring that no longer felt like a question mark, but a possibility patiently earning its moment. Chapter 8. The week that matters. The calendar did not care that they had been careful. It arrived anyway, unapologetic and immovable. Anniversary week. Randy noticed it Monday morning when his phone reminded him of a dentist appointment he'd forgotten to cancel. The date glowed at the top of the screen, innocuous and loaded all at once. 3 years. A week before his birthday. The symmetry of it had once felt like a gift. Now it felt like a test. He didn't mention it. That was the unspoken agreement. No tiptoeing, no setting traps, no pretending the week didn't exist. If it mattered, it would surface naturally. Kelly noticed it too. She noticed it when she opened her planner and saw the small heart she'd drawn there years ago, back when marking the date felt celebratory instead of fragile. She stared at it for a long time, then closed the book without crossing it out. She wasn't going to perform remembrance. She was going to be present. On Tuesday evening, Randy suggested dinner. Not coded, not loaded, just dinner. They chose a new place, neutral ground. No history, no muscle memory. It helped. Over pasta and shared plates, they talked about a future project Kelly was excited about and a potential role change Randy had been quietly considering. "You didn't tell me about that," Kelly said. "I wasn't sure it was real yet," he replied. "I want to know even when it's uncertain," she said. "That's part of showing up too." Randy nodded. Fair point. On Wednesday, Kelly asked if she could come with him to the bank. Randy paused mid-step. "The bank?" "Yeah," she said lightly. "I need to open a savings account. And I don't want to turn it into a whole thing, but I like doing boring life stuff together." He studied her for a second, then smiled. "Okay." They sat side by side in plastic chairs, waiting their turn, flipping through outdated brochures. It was mundane and oddly intimate. "This," Kelly said quietly, gesturing around them, "is what I was afraid of losing without realizing it." Randy glanced at her. "I didn't know you were afraid." "I didn't either," she admitted. Thursday came and went without acknowledgement of the date looming ahead. That night, Randy lay awake thinking about the ring. Not as a plan, but as a promise deferred. Kelly, across town, wrapped a small box in plain brown paper and tucked it into her closet. She didn't know if she'd give it to him. She just knew she needed it ready. Friday arrived. The anniversary. No texts at midnight. No dramatic gestures. Just a message from Randy mid-morning. "Can I steal you tonight?" No expectations. Kelly stared at the screen, heart pounding. "Yes," she replied. "Anywhere." They met at the river path just before sunset. The air was cool, the water catching light in broken shards. "I didn't want a restaurant," Randy said as they started walking. "Too many assumptions." Kelly nodded. "I'm glad." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. 3 years, Kelly said eventually. Not celebratory, not guilty. Just factual. Randy exhaled. "Yeah. I didn't forget," she said softly. This time, he looked at her, searching not for proof, but for alignment. "I know," he said. They stopped at the bench where they'd once talked about moving in together years ago, back when the future felt abstract and exciting. Kelly turned to him. "I want to say something without making it about reassurance." "Okay. I'm sorry I stopped paying attention when things felt safe," she said. "And I'm grateful you didn't let me keep doing that." Randy swallowed. "I'm sorry I waited so long to say I was hurting." She smiled faintly. "Looks like we're both better at honesty now." They sat there until the light faded completely. No proposal. No dramatic moment. But when Randy reached for her hand this time, she laced her fingers through his without hesitation. On Sunday night, 2 days before his birthday, Randy went to the bank. He opened the lockbox. This time, he took the ring out and brought it home. Kelly spent that same evening writing a card. She rewrote it 3 times before settling on something simple and unguarded. Neither of them said anything, but both of them felt it. The quiet certainty that whatever came next wouldn't be automatic or assumed. It would be chosen. The week that had once broken something fragile had instead reinforced something sturdier. And now, with Randy's birthday approaching, the question wasn't whether they were on the same page. It was how they would choose to turn it together. Chapter 9. The choice. Randy woke up on his birthday to sunlight and quiet. No alarm. No buzzing phone. Just the soft awareness of a day beginning whether he was ready for it or not. He lay there for a moment thinking, not with anxiety this time, but with a steady sense of readiness. The ring sat in his dresser drawer, not hidden, not ceremonial, just present, like the decision he'd already made. He wasn't going to propose because it was his birthday. He was going to propose because he knew. Kelly woke up an hour later, already alert. She checked the time, then her phone, not for messages but for grounding. She breathed, stretched, and reminded herself that whatever happened today didn't need to be perfect to be meaningful. She texted Randy at 9. "Happy birthday. Coffee on me?" He replied almost immediately. "Only if you let me walk you there." They met downstairs, both smiling in that soft, unguarded way that had become familiar again. Randy noticed the way Kelly looked at him. Not expectant, not apologetic. just present. That look says you have a plan, he said as they started walking. She laughed. You're projecting. Maybe, he said, but you do tend to get this calm before the event thing. And you tend to notice everything, she replied, which I'm very aware of now. They grabbed coffee, talked easily, and lingered longer than necessary. There were no speeches, no weight in the air. Afterward, Randy suggested a walk. Anywhere specific? Kelly asked. Yeah, he said. There's a place. They drove out of the city, just far enough for the buildings to thin and the noise to soften. Kelly recognized the trailhead immediately, the overlook where they'd once talked about everything they wanted and nothing they were afraid of. You remembered, she said. I always remember this place, Randy replied. They walked the path slowly, the air crisp, the view opening gradually. When they reached the overlook, Randy stopped, not dramatically, not suddenly. He turned to her. Before I say anything else, he said, I need to say this clearly. Kelly's heart thudded, but she stayed still. I don't want a future that runs on assumptions, he continued. I don't want autopilot. I don't want to wait for proof that something's wrong before we talk about it. She nodded, eyes shining. Neither do I. I want a life where we keep choosing each other out loud, he said. Even when things feel steady, especially then. Kelly took a breath. I can do that. I want to. Randy reached into his jacket pocket, not rushing, not theatrical. He held the ring between them, letting it exist before giving it meaning. I bought this when I thought certainty was enough, he said. I kept it when I realized it wasn't. Kelly's breath caught, but she didn't interrupt. I'm asking now, Randy said, voice steady, because I know what this takes, and I want to do it with you. Intentionally, honestly, every day. He didn't drop to one knee. He didn't need to. Kelly Miles, he said, will you marry me? Kelly laughed through her tears, a sound that felt like release. Yes, she said immediately. Yes, not because it's perfect, but because it's us paying attention. Randy slid the ring onto her finger, hand steady, heart full. She pulled him into a kiss that tasted like relief and joy and something sturdier than either. When they pulled back, Kelly rested her forehead against his. Happy birthday, she murmured. Randy smiled. Best one yet. They stood there for a long moment, the future no longer abstract or assumed, but chosen. Not because they never missed a date, but because they learned how to notice when it mattered.